Hey everyone, welcome back to the Growth Signal. We have an incredible guest today. I'm Alyssa Nolte,
And I'm Andrew Carothers.
and we are ready to talk to you about the future of customer relationships, how we build them, how we keep them, and how we continue to lead as customer expectations rapidly evolve. So let's get right into it. Andrew, what is your hot take?
Alyssa, my hot take is that every customer wants a digital first customer experience.
Okay,
Not
that is a hot take.
yeah. I think conventional wisdom is it is a tech touch for the bottom of the pyramid in terms of customer segmentation. And I'm telling you, that is a mistake. That is not what your larger customers want, as well as your smaller customers.
Okay, so tell me more. Like, have you seen this in action or have you seen it go the other way where it was high touch but a total disaster?
Yeah, so I have seen this in action. Um, so for background, I helped build the customer experience team overall at Cisco, starting it 17 years ago, and then with a focus on digital from the get go. And when we started 17 years ago, digital to us was a tech touch for us to scale across the globe and across customer at the low end of the scale. However, what we have noticed over the last 17 years, especially accelerated by the pandemic, is that every customer wants a digital first experience. So we shifted our thinking to build customer digital experiences with every customer in mind. So we see customers who are looking, I mean, we see just in the B2C space, it used to be people thought about digital as sort of a low risk way to buy toothbrushes or low cost items from Amazon. People are buying cars online. People are getting home loans online. They're getting their largest purchases online in their life. And we see that in the business world too. So a great example that I think resonates with a lot of people is if we travel, when was the last time any of us started planning a trip by picking up the phone and calling an airline? We go online, whether it's directly to the airline or multiple airlines or to a travel consolidator like Kayak, whatever it might be. We do all of our research online. We buy our tickets online. We book our hotels online. We do research online to figure out, which hotel to book in. All of that's done online. I took a trip myself recently, came back a week ago, and was able to using JetBlue was able to track the location of the bag that I checked all along the way, so that I didn't have to use an Apple Tag inside my bag. This was through JetBlue. So great example of good digital experiences are what people want, and the reason why is that it's faster. People want, whether they are all customers, want to get to value as quickly and as smoothly as possible. And value could be sort of writ large in terms of I bought this software and I'm looking to get as much value out of it over the course of using it for a year or 6 months, or it might be in the moment. I am looking for a specific piece of information and I'm looking, so value to me is I get that information. And and the quickest way to do that is to just go online and get it. Now, I want to be really clear here. A lot of people say, no, people don't like that. I'd rather just talk to a human. That's if they don't have a good digital experience. So
Yeah.
digital is no different than analog experience. No one wants a bad one. People get frustrated by bad ones. You could pick up the phone and talk to somebody and get shuffled through the phone system. And each time you get shuffled off to a different agent, they don't know who you are. You have to start all over again with what you promised. That's a bad experience while talking to a human. So everyone
Mhm.
wants a good experience. And the fastest way, which is also what people want, is to provide that digitally. And then I would say with an off ramp, that easy to find and easy to access off ramp that goes to a human. So that handoff needs to be clearly available. And there has to be a data flow handoff so that when you do connect with that human, the human already knows
Right.
who you are, what you're trying to do, et cetera. So that I definitely have seen the the customer base change over the last 15 years to one where all customers want that. And we see that by tracking customers and who's connecting with us. And what we've seen over the years is more and more it's every customer, not just a small one.
I wanna highlight something that you said, and you doubled down on this, and I agree. People want good digital experience. It has to be good. I'm a big believer that your software should be invisible. The level of effort that it takes to use it should all happen on the back end. It's like the duck on the water, right? The feet are
Yep.
furiously churning under the water, but on the surface, you just see a duck swimming, right? And I think part of it is when we create a physical experience, we think about these architects, right? We go into a building, everything is meticulously designed. I was talking to someone who was interning for an architecture firm, and she was telling me her entire job was to design where the outlets go in these office buildings.
Wow.
And I was like, but that's really important because if you don't have enough outlets in the right spots, then people are going to be upset or using drop cords and like it could be a whole problem. Your job seems really, not that exciting on the surface, but it is really important. So we spend all this time and effort and emphasis on these physical spaces or how many playbooks and handoffs do our customer success teams need to have? And yet sometimes I think there's this perception of, well, digital is easier, so we don't have to think about it as hard. And then we end up with this really terrible experience that customers just aren't going to forgive us for.
Completely agree. I love the duck analogy because it ties into we think about when we're building an experience, when we're building a digital experience. I agree with you. I think a lot of people kind of slap it together. Well, we've got a website.
Right.
We'll put a link from the website to the customer community, and they can kind of go there. And oh, we send out a few emails. And rather than thinking like, what's underneath the water, right? All this furious thing. So we have to build the above water. We have to build the beautiful duck so that it ties to what customers need. What's their workflows? All the journey mapping, all the sort of traditional things that we think about when we think about building a customer experience. But the furious speed underneath the water is what makes that experience possible. So that is all of the connection points of connecting data, processes, people or siloed teams, platforms, and so that duck above the water can actually move because of everything that's being done behind the scenes that nobody sees. And I think to be fair, that's part of the problem for decision makers, especially sort of C-level decision makers who are going to be funding this, is they don't know what's underneath the water. It's a relatively new field, so it's not like there are a lot of CEOs who came from customer success or customer experience. So there are a lot of people who don't know what's going on underneath the water. It's just sort of this black box thing to them.
Right.
And they don't really appreciate it. And I get that. I understand that. But you need to have the feet moving furiously and the beautiful duck above water together for it to work.
Right. And I think you make a great point is that a lot of people don't necessarily know what happens in this little black box, right? And part of that is, we've seen a huge evolution in how software works and connects to each other. I was just talking with someone a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how Salesforce now integrates with all of their competitors essentially, and how that's a real shift from what it used to be. And my take on it was that is a customer demand. My Alexa talks to my vacuum and talks to my air conditioner, and my expectation is that all of my tech works together. And I get really frustrated when my smartwatch doesn't connect with my macro tracking app because everything is supposed to work together. And we've seen that in the consumer world for a long time, but it is starting to come into the business to business world and the expectation that it doesn't matter what systems you're using, they should all work flawlessly together.
Yeah, you're right. I think that we have seen a lot of changes in the business world driven by the consumer world and those expectations. Because after all, we're all consumers, right? We all live in the B2C world. Some of us work in the B2C world, some of us work in the B2B world. But as consumers, we're all in the B2C world. So the change in IT departments accepting Macs inside companies that used to be PC only,
Yep.
driven by people who said, I don't want to keep, two different types of operating systems that I need to work with. And so that change computing inside companies and the influence of Amazon, the ease, I think can't be understated here in the B2B world because it's helped make people comfortable with the idea of buying things online. And people may have, dipped their toes in the water by buying, you know, things that they're already familiar with, right? Toothbrushes or whatever it might be.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but now people are buying clothes, right? That's very personal. How is this going to
Yeah.
fit me or not? And then what gets important is the experience. How easy is it going to be for me to figure out what color pants I want and
Yeah.
size, etc.? How easy is it going to be for me to return those if they don't fit? And if the return policy is friction, right? If it's gonna cost me money every time I wanna return something, or if it is I have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops, or if it's inconvenient for me, here's the thing, I'll go somewhere else. So
Mhm.
we're in the age of the customer. It used to be the age of the business, whether you're in the B2B or the B2C world, where the company, the vendor, had the leverage in the relationship. You want what we sell? Then you
Right.
abide by our rules. So Cisco's a great example of this, just to go back to that one. I know, having worked there for 18 years, I know it really well. Cisco sold hardware, only
Yeah.
hardware. We got paid up front for that hardware. It was expensive. Our customers were IT shops who had hired Cisco trained employees. The barriers to exit for them were super high. They weren't going anywhere. Even if they didn't want to buy the latest thing at that price, they needed it, so they paid that price.
Right.
Or if they were frustrated with something, they were not going to a competitor. But in the software world, that changes where the barriers to exit are so low. If I'm a customer, I can drop out immediately. That's why we have the whole rise of customer success in the first place. So now we're in the age of the customer where companies need to make the purchase and the use, sort of the adoption and the renewal of that software easy. And I'll take it even one step further when it comes to customer support. The best customer support call is the one that never needs to get made.
Yep. Because if
It
I can solve it without having to talk to anybody on my own time, in my own space, in my own way,
in my
I'm much
preferred
happier.
channel. Yep,
Yep.
yep,
Yep.
absolutely. So the days of I'm going to build this. I'm going to do a couple of customer focus groups and sort of figure out what goes into the product. I'm going to roll it out. This is the pricing model. Off we go. Maybe I make some modifications along the way. There's customer support. It's a necessary evil. It's a cost center, but whatever. I need to do it as the business, right? Companies that operate that way, I think, are at best significantly limiting their growth. At worst, they're going to start declining. And the reason why is there are just too many competitors that won't or don't operate that way. And when customers can switch on a dime,
Yeah.
experience becomes what it's about. I mean, Gartner, Forrester, everybody shows with their studies, experience is at recently seen the most important buying criteria. It used to be the third most important after functionality, right? Does this software do what I need it to do? And then quality, is it going to break all the time or is it buggy? Once we get past those two things, then experience. And then comes pricing.
Yeah.
So being the cheapest is no longer the recipe for success. Being the most expensive is not, it's sort of like the high end version of it is not the recipes for success. There are too many options for customers that are too easy for them to access, for them to put up with anything that's inconvenient. Life's too short.
Well, and you mentioned, Cisco, and I was trying to remember how we got connected, and I finally remembered that, a former guest, Gary Mara, connected us and said,
Yeah.
"Hey, you need to be a guest." But I know a ton of people in the Cisco universe, right? And, so I was like, "Did someone from Cisco connect us?" And then I figured it out. But one of the things that we have seen in evolution of companies like Cisco is it used to be you buy a hardware for 3 years of an agreement, and you're kinda stuck with that hardware because 'cause you're not gonna be buying switches every,
Yeah.
month or so. But now everything is less tangible. Everything is something you can't physically put your hands on. And I feel, and this is just, my hot take, is that customers are less loyal than ever before and good for them. And this idea that, hey, customer, my experience as your customer that's table stakes now. And you need to deliver on it. And if you're not, then I should get to move on. And there should be no repercussions for me doing so. And I should get to move on to whoever is going to give me those table stakes. And I'm willing to pay more for a premium to ensure that I have a frictionless experience, to your point.
Amen. Amen. Yep.
So how do we like okay, if we both kind of agree on that. How do
Okay.
we actually move companies in that direction? If I'm a leader and I want to create a totally frictionless great experience that my customers will love and will keep them in my, in my customer list instead of moving on. What is the first thing you would have them start doing?
Okay. So got to go down two paths. Back to our duck analogy. You have to figure out above the water. So you have to do the journey mapping and understand your customers to be able to build out what that experience looks like. What's the experience? What are the pain points, and how can I fix those? What are the moments that really matter? That meaning they are memorable for a customer. That's a point that really matters to me. Whether you do it well, you do it poorly, I'm going to remember. So you have to figure that out. And then there's the under the water, the feed. So how do I connect all of the data that we have about those customers or that customer across the enterprise? How do we connect various platforms? How do we connect teams that, because typically we have multiple teams that are touching that customer or have knowledge about that customer, whether that's product management or marketing. We need to connect IT, right? So all of the different things, I think customer experience becomes the glue connecting siloed companies together. So we got to connect data, people or teams, platforms. We got to figure out the business rules and and connect that together. So it's a two-pronged process that run in parallel. The first thing I would do for both of those is to figure out what data do we have. Data is the fuel for the engine. So what data do we have internally today? What purchasing or renewal data do we have? Or if we have telemetry, what adoption data do we have? And then what data can we get that's external to what we have? So what are they saying on Reddit or in our peer communities? How often are they connecting with customer support and about what issues? And do we have transcripts of those calls? And we can use data science to figure out so much about what our customers are saying in a way that we couldn't do 5 years ago, right? But now we can, rather than do a survey and hope we get a response, now we can generate so much data or have access to so much data and generate so much insight so that we really understand that particular customer or customers in that industry or in, whatever persona we want to put together and whatever customer segmentation we want to do. We can figure out what do they need? Where are they getting stuck with adoption or a particular feature, whatever it might be, so that now we can really go back to that above the water line and optimize the experience that we built out for them. So number one step is identify what data you have, what the gaps are, and access that data and derive insights from it.
You are speaking my language, my friend. I can't help but smile because I'm very much one of those people like, okay, we have to figure out what data we already have. But I love to think about it too as like a curation because not all data is good data and some data is actually distracting. I was actually talking with a former Cisco CSM and they were Webex CSM and their usage was like great, looked great, and it was actually even spiking in some areas. Turns out they were moving to Zoom and they were basically just like working on that transition. And you were seeing those spikes because they were in meetings to announce those transitions. And the usage analytics went from like normal to even good and just cratered overnight because they had made the transition. This was 3 months before the contract renewal was scheduled. So they made the transition with like a 3-month buffer essentially. And so the CSM is blindsided and it's too late. But what else could they do? Right. So for them, usage analytics looked good. What else can you say? But because they were kind of a false flag, he, got embarrassed at the end of the day because he lost a pretty major contract to Zoom.
And I would, since you brought it up, I would suggest to you that the digital experience for WebEx within Cisco is not optimized. I'll put it that way. It's not optimized.
Yeah.
And had it been, perhaps, I don't know the details of this particular customer, but perhaps that would have led to more adoption within the customer of WebEx, and they never would have moved to Zoom. I I don't know that for sure, but
Yeah.
that I have seen firsthand within Cisco, some business units do a really good job with their customer experience, in particular, the digital customer experience, and see adoption rise significantly, see renewals drive significantly, see
Yeah.
upsell and cross sell. So overall growth rates increase significantly. So very good for the company, very good for the customer. I've also seen different business units that are not as optimized when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And they do not see the same rises in adoption. They do not see the same sort of raving positive customers, and they do not see the same business results.
I would think too that might just be a side effect too of like being such a large business, right? Because I'm a small business, right? We can pivot on a dime and sometimes pivot maybe too hard, too fast. So I think that's probably true of a lot of our larger businesses, and some of that leadership has to come from the top to say, I know we're a big giant ship, but how do we make sure that we are moving in the direction and making those micro adjustments and giving people inside of the organization the freedom and permission to implement those great changes, right? Because that's not all gonna come down from on high. It's gonna have to come down from the individual, maybe even the manager level, driving those forward and giving ICs and managers and directors or whoever their permission to create an experience that customers want to stay for.
Yeah, it's the balance between let a thousand flowers bloom, and at the same time, we needed standardization, not only from a business perspective, so that we can optimize costs, et cetera, or be efficient, but also from the customer's perspective. Customers want a standardized experience when they're engaging with a company. Companies large as Cisco, the average customer has something like 9 or 10 Cisco products in their portfolio. So they want to have a standard experience across all of those. And the larger the company, especially a company like Cisco, which not only is so large, but has grown significantly through acquisitions. It acquires something like 25 companies a year. Now, many of those are small, but still, that's a lot of brands coming in. And so from a marketing branding standpoint, as well as from an experience standpoint, experience of engaging with the product, experience of engaging with the company,
Yeah.
but that's the challenge, and so it's a difficult balance between, as I said, let a thousand flowers bloom and standardization.
Yeah, and I have one more, like, I guess, devil's advocate challenge for you on
Yeah.
that. Do you think that people want a standard experience or an individualized experience?
I think they want so yes, they want a standard experience across their engagement with the particular company. So if I'm going to the website and I'm going to the customer, whatever channel I'm engaging with that company in, I want it to look the same. I wanna
Yeah.
right, I want if there are multiple chat bots, I wanna make sure that I engage with them each the same, right? I don't want one where I type in the answer down at the bottom of the window and another one where it's up the top. Right? So there's certain visual elements
Mhm.
that I want some standardization around. That said, I want my engagement to be personalized that way because what I want a relevant experience. So when I say personalized, really I mean personally relevant. I'm less interested when people say, dear Andrew. I'm more interested when they say, you seem to not be using this next feature in the product, or you seem to be stuck at this stage of adopting the product. Here's information to help you. That is what is relevant to me in the
Okay.
moment, my stage of using the product or not using the product, whatever it might be. If I get transferred, if I'm talking to somebody and I get transferred within that, I want them to know who I am, what I've purchased, especially if I'm a larger customer. I might feel like I'm entitled to a little more white gloving. But that happens. That can be not just when I'm talking to a human, but digitally. I want the company to know that Andrew Carothers, and I work at, company X, and I have bought XYZ product, and I use this well, and I don't use that well, and here's the thing, and you kind of touched on this earlier. In 2025 and beyond, there's no excuse for companies not knowing all that information about me. We've gone through the needle of privacy concerns where customers are unwilling to give their information out of privacy concern. Writ large, right? There are some who still have privacy concerns. But I think for the most part, people have either realized, oh, I get benefit from it, or they've just given up the fight. Um,
Right.
but in return, they expect that they're going that information about themselves, what they bought, etc., is going to be used to
Yep.
make the experience with them relevant. Otherwise, they're
Right.
just giving up information for free, and
Right.
that's frustrating. Like I'm
Right.
giving
I'm not
free,
gonna
yeah,
the two-way exchange, right? Like, if I'm gonna give this to you, I better get something in return. And
right.
it's no longer me just giving you, the company, my money and my time and my information. It's I want something back, which is personalized, custom, and relevant, I think is the right word.
That's the word. And if
Relevant
I don't get
experiences.
it, I've got 4 other options to go to.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. A couple clicks of a button and a contract, cancellation, and all of a sudden I'm moving on to your competitor.
Yep.
So, Andrew, if someone is really connecting with you, if they wanna learn more, where can they find you online?
I would love it if they would. Find me on LinkedIn. It's a great place to reach out to me, connect with me, send me a message. Let's connect. I've built a lot of relationships that way, including some offline relationships. So please do.
Awesome, and one of my favorite questions, I'm a lifelong continuous learner. If someone is, wanting to learn more, they want to expand their skill set here, who else should we be listening to? Who is leading
Okay.
the charge?
Yeah, a few people that I really get a lot of value from every time they say something. So there are. I'm a big fan of podcasts. So TSIA, Technology Services Industry Association, has
Yep.
a podcast called Tectonic. Big fan of that. It's not all about digital customer experience, but it's about tech, and they touch on this a lot. Specific to digital customer experience is Alex Turkovich's Digital Customer Success podcast. Big fan of that. Sam Stern, who works at LinkedIn, has his own podcast. He was previously was a Forrester analyst, and helped build Forrester's CS practice. So a lot of wisdom coming from Sam. He's got a newsletter. He's got a podcast. So a big fan of that. It's called CX Patterns. Um, and there's a Slack community, CX Connection, which is really focused in on digital. And there's a second one, Digital CS, which is also very much focused in on digital. I get a lot of value out of those. So I'm thinking specifically about digital here.
Awesome. Alex was a guest on our show a couple of months ago, and he's a really good, very smart dude.
Yeah.
We'll have to hit up Sam Stern as well and see if we can get him on the show to talk about the future of customer relationships. But
Yeah. Good guy.
thank you so much for your time. This was a really great conversation, and I can't wait for everyone to hear it.
This is going to be great. Thank you so much.